The new McCrispy Strip is here. Dip approved by ketchup, tangy barbecue, honey mustard, Sprite, McFlurry, Big Mac sauce, double dipped in buffalo and ranch, more ranch, and creamy chili McCrispy Strip Dip. Now at McDonald's. Ba-da-ba-ba-ba.
This message comes from Greenlight. Ready to start talking to your kids about financial literacy? Meet Greenlight, the debit card and money app that teaches kids and teens how to earn, save, spend wisely, and invest with your guardrails in place. With Greenlight, you can send money to kids quickly, set up chores, automate allowance, and keep an eye on your kids' spending with real-time notifications. Join millions of parents and kids building healthy financial habits together on Greenlight. Get started risk-free at greenlight.com/Wondery.
Bombas makes the most comfortable socks, underwear, and T-shirts.
Warning, Bombas are so absurdly comfortable you may throw out all your other clothes.
Sorry, do we legally have to say that?
No, this is just how I talk, and I really love my Bombas.
They do feel that good. And they do good, too. One item purchased equals one item donated.
To feel good and do good, go to bombas.com/Wondery and use code WONDERY for 20% off your first purchase. That's BOMBAS.com/Wondery and use code WONDERY at checkout.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 191 of the True Crime All the Time Unsolved podcast. I'm Mike Ferguson, and with me, as always, is my partner in true crime, Mike Gibson. Gibby, what is going on?
Hey, man, I'm doing good. How about you?
I'm doing really well.
Yeah?
And I'm glad to hear that you're doing well. How was your first week back to work?
Oh, man, exhausting.
I bet.
Yeah.
I bet. You've been laying around for a couple of months, taking it easy. Not taking it easy.
Well, you know.
Battling, but still.
Right.
For anybody that's been off for an extended period of time, it's not easy to get back into the grind. It wears you down very quickly.
It does. But I'm glad to be back.
Yeah, I'm sure you are, because you like to work. So we have some great new Patreon supporters. Let's give some shout outs. We had Brittany Pohl.
Hey, Brittany.
Lynn Chevalier.
Hey, Chevalier.
Aubrey. Ray 6714.
What's going on, 6714?
Nick Serafinov.
Selapinov.
Good.
Yeah.
Matt Eversole.
Hey, Matt.
Kara Leahy.
What's going on, Kara?
Sarah Keach.
Hey, Sarah.
Carly.
Well, hello, Carly.
Becky Whitlock.
What's going on, Becky?
Minky Muskie Sly Old Foxy.
Well, hello, Mickey Foxy.
Michaela Stahlbrand.
Hey, Michaela.
Delia Howland.
What's going on, Delia?
Michelle Forsythe.
Well, thank you, Michelle.
Sylvia Aparicio.
Ooh, Aparicio.
That's a fun name to say.
It is.
Allison Farr Green.
Well, thank you, Allison.
Mary Beth Matthews.
Hey, Mary Beth.
Chris Koretz.
Koretz.
Jocelyn LT.
Yeah, got a little JLT in the house.
Mm-hmm. Kayla Aby.
Hey, Kayla.
Cindy Burton.
Well, thank you, Cindy.
And Jane Bailey.
Good old Jane.
So we appreciate all that new support. If we go back into the vault, Gibbs.
Yeah.
This week we selected Samara Jacobs.
Awesome. Thank you, Samara.
We love the new support, the continued support. It's amazing. We had some great PayPal donations. Jennifer Warmuth.
Thanks, Jennifer.
Angie Stevenson.
Hey, thanks, Angie.
Kathleen Martin.
Well, thank you, Kathleen.
And Marion Kahn.
Awesome. Thank you, Marion.
Big thanks to all of you as well. Gibbs, right now we have a brand new episode out on TCAT. We're talking about 17-year-old Napoleon Beasley. And this was kind of a case I was looking for, lesser known, but it had some really interesting facets to it. Number one, the murderer is 17 years old.
Right.
And so you have, kind of the legal aspects of that. You have the death penalty debate for a person that's under 18. But check that out. There's a lot of interesting things in that episode.
Very good episode.
All right, buddy. Are you ready to get into this episode of True Crime All the Time Unsolved?
I am ready.
Before we begin, let's definitely give a big shout out to Lindsay Sklaric for researching this case. We're talking about the disappearance of Helen Brach. She was the heir to one of the world's wealthiest candy companies. Her disappearance and alleged murder occurred after acquiring her wealth. And Gibbs, you talk a lot about people's names when we do the shout outs, tying them to famous companies, wondering if they're the heir or heiress,
Right.
possibly to some of these companies. I think most people have heard of the name Brach.
Oh, big time.
That's huge in the candy world. So I think we start off with Helen's early life. Helen Marie Voorhees was born on November 10th, 1911, on a small farm in Unionport, Ohio. Helen married right after high school. She married her high school sweetheart, but they divorced at a pretty young age. This was not a marriage that lasted all that long. And there were some reports that Helen blamed herself for marrying a philandering playboy. Helen went to work at a pottery factory until she saved up enough money to move to Florida. She moved to Miami, Florida, and started working as a hostess at Miami's Indian Creek Country Club. She lived off the tips she collected from being a hostess. While Helen was working at the country club, she met 54-year-old Frank Brach. He was the son of Emil J. Brach, and heir of E.J. Brach and Sons, which at the time was one of the world's biggest candy producers. This is a company that's always been known for their caramel squares, coconut Neapolitan squares, candy hearts with words, and candy corn. I think when you're talking candy corn and candy hearts with words, that will probably take a lot of people back to their childhood.
Oh, absolutely.
Or maybe back just a month or two, depending on.
I always remember the bag of caramels, or caramel, or however you want to say it.
Mm-hmm. However you want to say it. That's the key.
Yeah, that they made. They were really good, really, really good. I was never a fan of the Neapolitan squares because they had coconut in them.
Oh, see, now I love coconut, but I don't know if I've ever had the coconut Neapolitan squares. I love caramels. I love, the candy hearts with words. That was more of a little kid thing for me. And I'm not actually a huge fan of candy corn, but.
Yeah, I'm not either. It has that aftertaste.
Well, for me, it's too sweet. Like I have one, you have one or two, and I'm like, I'm on sugar overload already.
Well, it's probably all sugar.
It's just way too sweet.
Yeah.
But Helen and Frank hit it off right away. There was a problem, though. Frank was married, but that didn't stop Helen. She pursued Frank because she had a goal of marrying a millionaire. So I think, when you look at everything that Helen had done to this point, right after her first marriage ended, moving to Miami, getting a job at this country club, the way that the research that we did, Gibbs, made it sound as though all of that was done with this one goal in mind of trying to meet a very rich man to marry and build a life with. Frank's marriage was rocky, and that's probably being euphemistic. Helen was a beautiful young redhead. She was exciting. It didn't take long for Frank to fall in love with Helen. It really didn't. Frank was known as the Candy King of Chicago.
Wonder if he knew Abe Froman.
The Sausage King of Chicago?
Yeah.
I love that movie. I actually have not seen Ferris Bueller's Day Off in a long time. I need to watch that.
It's been a long time that I've seen it too. Get the Sausage King together with the Candy King. Could be a fun event.
So Frank started the process of divorcing his wife, and at the same time started courting Helen while his divorce was being settled back in Chicago. In 1950, 38-year-old Helen and 59-year-old Frank got married, and they moved into Frank's 7-acre, 18-room estate in Glenview, which is just about 16 miles from Chicago. They also built a house on the exclusive and private Fisher Island.
Yeah, that's where all those famous stars live now.
Yeah, it's in Florida near Miami. They also had a farm retreat in southern Ohio, maybe not too far from where we are. I don't know exactly where it was, but I think you get the picture. Right. They had a lot of money.
Yeah.
You know, when you've got all these retreats and hideaways kind of all over the place and a huge estate for your main home, all right, you're doing pretty good. But when you're the son of a famous candy maker,
Doing all right, man.
You're doing all right. You're going to have that money.
Yeah.
Several years later, Frank's brother passed away, and that meant that Frank needed to spend more time at the office. But he continued to shower Helen with gifts all the time. And I mean, these weren't just everyday gifts. These were some very expensive gifts. We're talking about a lavender Rolls-Royce convertible,
Attractive looking.
a coral Cadillac sedan, and a white over pink Lincoln Continental. So obviously he was into cars, or she was,
Well, one of them had to be.
or that was the easiest thing for him to buy. I don't know.
Let me just get you another vehicle. I mean, when you have a luxury place in Florida and the farm in Ohio, and like you said, the mansion near Chicago, you got to have so many cars to go with that.
I don't know if that's keeping up with the Joneses. I think that's trying to surpass everyone around you.
Yeah. It'd be hard to keep up with them.
Over the years, as Frank got older, he was able to step away from the business a little bit and stay home with Helen a little bit more. I think Gibbs very much. He loved her. He wanted to be with her as much as he could. In the late 1960s, they spent a lot of their time in Florida. But on January 29th, 1970, Frank passed away, and he left everything to Helen. And when I say everything, it was a lot. She had the house, the farm, luxury apartment in Florida, all of the cars, about $30 million in assets.
1970, $30 million bucks, man.
It's a lot.
It is a lot.
It's a ton of money. But at the same time, Frank was her life. Helen didn't have many close friends. So after Frank's death, Helen was, living in this huge 18-room mansion. And the only person that she had to talk to was their butler, Jack Matlick, who had worked for the couple since 1959.
To have that big house to yourself, 18 rooms. As a kid, it'd be awesome. As an adult, you probably get bored pretty quick.
Well, bored without the love of your life to talk to. But,
yeah.
I think it would also be very, very depressing. Like you said, if you're a kid and you get to run around an 18-room mansion, that's awesome. To fill her days, Helen started getting involved with animals. She loved saving animals. She had a collection of stray cats. She had 2 poodles living in the house with her. She had horses. She wanted to do some good things with her money. So she used her inheritance to establish the Helen V Brach Foundation in 1974, which is still in operation today. But from the time that Frank passed away, Helen was not interested at all in dating anyone. I really think, Gibbs, she was absolutely heartbroken. Now, it might have sounded in the beginning that she wanted to meet and marry a millionaire, and she did. All of the reporting talked about that. That was not, something made up. But when you hear that, a word like gold digger or something like that might come to mind. But I think she truly loved Frank.
Oh, absolutely. I believe that.
And I think she was heartbroken and depressed beyond belief. She really stayed busy, with her love for animals, and then starting up the foundation.
Yeah, animals were her life after Frank was gone.
But sometime in 1973, she met a man named Richard Bailey while she was in Florida. Bailey was introduced to her by a mutual friend. What she didn't know was that Richard was a professional gigolo. The guy was a con man.
He really was.
And he was a really good one, apparently. Con man. I don't know how good of a gigolo he was. Maybe he was good at both.
I heard he was really good.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I will take your word because you would know.
Walked right into that one. Right into it.
I heard he was really good.
Yeah.
How did you know that was not going to come back to get you?
I don't know.
He owned a place called Bailey Stables and Country Club. Now, the first time that Helen met Richard was at a restaurant called the Morton House, which was famous for their 2-martini lunch.
Just can't have one. Got to have two.
Yeah. Back during that time, much more acceptable to drink during the day.
Oh, yeah.
Even at work, you leave, you go from the office, you go get lunch. People would drink and then go back to work.
I think it was kind of expected.
But here's the thing. Richard made his fortune swindling rich widows at that same restaurant by selling them what he was passing as prized horses. He owns these stables. Later, prosecutors would estimate that he swindled between 20 to 100 wealthy victims. He would get these women to buy his overpriced horses. He courted them until he basically took everything that they were willing to give. And I mean, that's what a con man does.
Yeah.
Right? They work you, and they might go slow at first until they get their hooks into you. But at the same time, they're looking for ways to get everything you got.
I heard him do this interview where he talked about how he would focus on one thing that he could actually like about the woman. Because he said normally there was nothing that he liked. He wasn't attracted to him, but he had to find that one thing that he would like about them. Whatever that one thing was, he would focus on that and just continue doing that until he got all the money he could out of them. And then he'd be done with them and disgusted with who they were and how they were, but he got their money at that point and then he moved on. And this is just what this guy did.
It was a cycle. Yeah.
And I guess he was really good at it.
Well, Helen was one of his victims. In 1974, she was 62 years old. Richard was 44. That same year, Helen invested in 3 horses and he swindled her. He conned her into believing that, these were great racehorses when in reality, these 3 horses were well past their prime, and that's probably putting it mildly.
Yeah.
But this is something that Helen would find out later. She paid $95,000 for the horses, which Bailey had paid only about $17,000 for. That's pretty good money.
It's a good profit.
Mm-hmm. He also convinced her to buy a group of breeding horses as well. On December 31st, 1976, Helen Brach and Richard Bailey met up together for the New Year's celebration in New York City. They stayed together at the Waldorf Astoria Hotel.
Very nice. Very nice place.
Very swanky.
Yes.
During this get-together, over a couple of days, Richard convinced Helen to buy a few more great racehorses and pay him $150,000 for them.
Price is going up.
Now, that's a lot of money.
Well, 1976. Wow.
But if you're worth $30-40 million,
yeah.
Okay, it's still a lot of money, but in relation to your wealth, it's not.
No, percentage-wise.
Percentage-wise, it's not. After the New Year's celebration, Helen visited her farm in Ohio. While she was there, she met with some of her old friends, and she decided to confide in them about Richard and the horse deal. They advised her to hire an appraiser before going through with the sale. So she did hire an appraiser, and the appraiser advised her not to go through with these deals with Richard and basically to consider the money that she had already spent as wasted money.
Yeah, not going to get that money back.
You're not winning any races. You're not racing these horses that are essentially at the end of their life.
Yeah, just farm horses now.
So I think as anybody would be, Helen was very suspicious, and she actually confronted Richard and some of his employees at his stables in late January 1977. She threatened him by saying that she was going to go to the state's attorney's office and charge him with fraud. She told him that her friend offered to introduce her to prosecutors who would help with the investigation into Richard.
Last thing you want to hear is a con artist.
Yeah, that you've been made.
Yeah.
That's one. That's number one.
Well, the con is up.
Yeah, I think number one, you don't want to hear that. But even worse is to hear that This is a person who has influential people in her life at her disposal, and the word investigation. A con man doesn't want to hear that at all. On Thursday, February 17th, 1977, Helen flew to the Mayo Clinic in Rochester, Minnesota for a comprehensive checkup with her physician. She left with a clean bill of health, both physically and mentally, as well as psychologically. She was checked out, good to go. After her appointment, she did some shopping. She stopped at the buckskin shop where she bought a small gift for her niece using her credit card. And she spent about $41 on a soap dish and a powder box. She asked that it be mailed to her apartment in Florida. This was shortly after 1 p.m. She told the clerk she was in a rush because she had to catch her flight back to her home in Illinois that day. And she said, "I'm in a hurry. My houseman is waiting." Investigators were not sure what this meant because Helen traveled alone. No one had seen anyone else with her, but this is the last reliable sighting of Helen Brach. Now, it wouldn't be known to authorities that she had gone missing for another few weeks. But once they were aware, investigators put the following events together. They know that she was seen buying items at the buckskin shop around 1 p.m. on February 17th after her checkup at the Mayo Clinic. Her flight to Chicago's O'Hare Airport was supposed to leave shortly after that. But when investigators questioned the crew of that flight, not a single person recalled seeing Helen on it.
Yeah, but it was weeks later when they actually questioned the crew, so your memory, your recall after doing so many flights would be difficult.
Yeah, I think it would for anyone when you get to, a couple of weeks after the event. I think even more so for somebody like a flight attendant who is on a number of flights a day, possibly.
Yeah.
Seeing how many different passengers every single day. That would make it even tougher, I would think.
And I really doubt she's walking on the plane going,
"I'm Helen Brach.
I'm the candy queen."
Yeah. Yeah, I think it would be tough. Now, the airline did say someone used her ticket to board that flight. So the question is, was it Helen Brach or was it someone else? And if it was someone else, who was it? And did they have something to do with her disappearance?
Yeah. I mean, back then it was different getting on the plane, right?
Much
today,
different.
You just got on the plane. Heck, I think back then you could still smoke on a plane.
Yeah, I guarantee you in the 70s you could. Gibbs, we mentioned that one of the shop associates said that Helen told them that her houseman was waiting on her. Well, that was her butler, Jack Matlick. Over the years, I guess spending so much time together, just the two of them, she had taken to calling him not her butler, but her houseman. I don't know. Maybe she thought that sounded better. I'm not sure, but
yeah. You still call me your butler when I'm here.
I do.
Yeah. You're like, "Gibby, go get me that. Gibby, go get me this."
And that's an upgrade from houseboy, which is what I used to call you. But Jack Matlick told investigators that he picked Helen up from O'Hare Airport and drove her home to Glenview. He then said he called his wife and told her that he had to stay at Glenview and work all weekend. His wife later said this was very unusual. This was not something that, he did all that often. He usually went home to their farmhouse in Schaumburg, Illinois, which was owned by Helen, every night to be with his wife and 3 children.
So it's kind of bizarre. If he not his normal practice, right?
It is. And I think it's the reason why, and we'll get into it more here in a little bit, but people question whether or not she actually took this flight, even though he told investigators that, yeah, he picked her up.
Right.
Jack told investigators that he and Helen stayed in the house alone all weekend, except Helen had one brief meeting with a man that Jack had never met before. But Jack was insistent that he saw Helen after this meeting. She was getting ready to go to Florida to handle the details of a condominium purchase. Jack told investigators that no one else visited or even called her that weekend outside of this one unknown man.
But there's going to be a problem with that statement.
There is, because Helen's friends have a different story. They said that they tried to call Helen. Some even tried to visit her, but Jack Matlick told them that she was unavailable and she would call them when she could. Investigators got the phone records from the phone company, which showed a dozen calls coming into the house phone, which I think makes it pretty clear that there were a number of her friends that were trying to get in touch with her. Even her semi-boyfriend, Richard Bailey, said that he tried to call her on Sunday, February 20th. Matlick answered the phone, and when he asked for Helen, Jack acted surprised and said he thought she was with him, as he saw a man pick her up and assumed it was Richard. So again, I mentioned it, right? Some suspicion around Jack, and I think we're hearing some more details that even add to that suspicion. It sounds like he was telling investigators one thing, but the people in Helen's life were giving details that kind of flew in the face of the things that Jack was saying. Kind of disproved, really, even some of the things he was saying.
Yeah. Definitely conflicting.
Well, when you say that an unknown man showed up to meet with Helen, and that's the only person that came to the house, and now you're saying, well, hey, Richard, I thought you came to that. I thought that was you.
Yeah.
That's not what I told investigators.
No. Somebody's lying in that mix.
Exactly. Another one of her friends, Bolton Morris, president of the Animal Protection Institute of America, told investigators that he spoke with Helen the night before she left for Rochester, Minnesota. He told her he would call again that weekend, and he tried twice to get in touch with her, but no one answered the phone. 4 days later, he tried again. This time, Jack Matlick answered. Bolton asked where Helen was, and he was told that she was in Florida. He also asked Jack about where she'd been. He'd called 4 days before, and he was told by Jack that she was out with Richard Bailey. The problem with that story is 4 days earlier was the same night that Richard Bailey said he had called from Florida trying to get in touch with Helen. So this guy's stories are falling apart all over the place.
It's a big mess.
Craving your next action-packed adventure? Audible delivers thrills of every kind on your command, like Project Hail Mary by Andy Weir, where a lone astronaut must save humanity from extinction, narrated with stunning intensity by Ray Porter. From electrifying suspense and daring quest to spine-tingling horror and romance in far-off realms, unleash your adventurous side with gripping titles that'll keep you guessing. Discover exclusive Audible originals, hotly anticipated new releases, and must-listen bestsellers that hook you from the first minute. Because Audible knows there's no greater thrill than the one that speaks to you. Discover what lies beyond the edge of your seat. Start your free 30-day trial at audible.com/WonderyUS. That's audible.com/WonderyUS. How much is an hour of your time worth? Whether you're a realtor, lawyer, accountant, or even a content creator, Stamps.com gives you the ability to focus your time on what you do best, not on tedious mailing and shipping tasks. Print stamps, shipping labels, or certified mail forms in seconds. More than 4 million customers have relied on Stamps.com to make their lives easier. Go to Stamps.com/audio for a special offer. No contract, cancel anytime. That's Stamps.com/audio.
Matlick said on Monday, February 21st, after Helen packed her bags, he took her to the airport at 6:50 a.m. and dropped her off for her flight, which was at 9 a.m. And that was the last time he saw her. He said she left him with instructions about bringing down other clothing she had packed. He even described her as wearing a black pantsuit with a white blouse, black tie, and black leather shoes and purse. He said she only had an overnight bag.
That's a lot of details on what she was wearing.
Yeah, pretty specific.
Yeah.
But it wasn't until 2 weeks after that when Jack reported her missing. When he tried to report her missing, he was told that it had to be done by a family member. So he reached out to Helen's brother, Charles Voorhees, to express his concern. He was worried because he hadn't heard from her. So the two of them went down to the police station to report Helen missing. While they were at the police station, Jack Matlick suggested that police give him a lie detector test, since he was the last one to see her. Apparently, he took 2 different tests, and both came back as inconclusive.
So for me, it's a very, very bizarre thing to do.
Yeah, I knew you were going to say that.
It's basically saying, hey, look at me. I probably did this or had something to do with this. Why would you just come out right away and say, give me the test, man. I want to make sure I'm clear.
Yeah, it's very odd. I mean, it's almost as if he knew that he was going to be suspected of something, and he was trying to allay that suspicion right off the bat.
Right.
And maybe he could have if he would have passed the lie detector test. Maybe that was his thinking all along.
Sure, yeah.
But to me, it's strange now today to take a lie detector test at all. I wouldn't take one.
No.
For reasons that you and I have talked about at length. And that's if police even asked you to take one.
Yeah.
I sure as hell wouldn't offer to take
Volunteer it up.
Volunteer.
Especially back then when you knew that they put a lot of weight behind them.
Yes. Because 2 tests coming back as inconclusive, you're on the radar for sure now.
Oh, yeah.
Even if you weren't before, or if you were on the radar before, now you're at the top of the list. You're suspect number 1. So investigators checked into the flights out of O'Hare on February 21st. They couldn't find any 9 a.m. flights or any other flights where Helen was listed as a passenger.
Well, that's a huge problem.
It seems like there's a lot of problems.
Yeah. I don't think she's flying under some different name.
Yeah. She doesn't really have the need to go incognito.
No.
I know you always fly under an assumed name.
I do.
For fear of being mobbed at the airport.
It is a concern.
But I don't think she had that concern.
No.
Helen's friend who lived in Florida, Douglas Stevens, was a person that Helen often asked to pick her up at the airport. He told investigators that she never reached out to him. She never contacted him about this trip. Now, take that for what it's worth. Maybe she could have found somebody else, but it sounds like he was her go-to guy.
Yeah.
When it came to, I'm flying into Florida, can you come get me?
So she didn't reach out to him. Did she even go to Florida?
I think that's what investigators had to be thinking. Matlick said Helen went without a plane ticket and not much luggage, which, again, to investigators, these are things that just don't make a lot of sense.
No, it really doesn't add up.
And you pile all of these things together that Jack is saying, none of them seem to make sense. Add that to the 2 lie detector tests, and they must have had pictures of him all over the flipping station.
Yeah. I think the other issue is that a lot of her friends came out and said, hey, Helen wasn't a morning person. There was no way she flew out that early that day. She just wasn't a morning person. And I know, traveling with you, you're not a morning person. And there's no way if someone said, oh, Fergie took a 6:30 flight or a 9 o'clock flight, I'd be like, not if there was an opportunity to take one later. There's no way he would have took that flight.
Unless there was a reason why I had to be somewhere by a certain time. And we don't know that she had to be.
That's true.
So when you're working off of that, if she didn't have to be and she's not a morning person, she would have taken a later flight. She's flying out of O'Hare. She's not flying out of Podunkville.
Right.
So there's quite a few flights.
Yeah.
I'm sure that are headed down to Florida.
And she's got enough money she can buy a ticket on whatever flight she wants.
Yeah. I think the other thing that, her friends said is that Helen didn't really like to do things without a plan. She wasn't the type of person who would have just all of a sudden spontaneously gone to the airport without a ticket and without a plan.
Right.
That just wasn't her.
So her friends, people would have known that she was headed to Florida and things like that. Not just, I'm waking up, I'm going to go to Florida today.
So this should not come as a shock to anyone investigators looked at Jack Matlick as the prime person of interest. For one thing, he did have a criminal past. We've talked about it. His accounts of events didn't seem to add up. Rumors had spread that Matlick was set to inherit about $50,000.
A lot of money back then.
That was a lot of money back then if Helen died. But I don't believe, Gibbs, from the research that investigators were ever able to confirm this. I don't think they found any evidence of this potential inheritance. What they did find, though, was that Matlick attempted to cash several checks from Helen's account that did not go through. And the reason why they didn't go through was that someone at the bank questioned the signature. They didn't think it was Helen's signature. Matlick told police that Helen had signed several checks before she left, totaling about $15,000. Most of these checks were made out to Jack Matlick. And during their investigation, investigators figured out that the checks were not signed by Helen. So they confronted Jack, and he finally broke down and told them that he signed them for her because she had injured her hand and could not do it herself. So, I mean, number one, this guy's telling a lot of stories,
Sure.
but he also has a reason for everything that seems to crop up. But here's the strange part. Police had a handwriting expert look at these signatures, and this expert determined that Jack didn't sign them. But apparently the samples were never checked against anyone else's handwriting. So that's pretty strange.
It is strange.
If he's trying to get to her money in a way that he shouldn't be, okay, you would think he's forging her signature on checks. Well, the expert's saying, no, he didn't do that. Also, then you have to question, why is he lying and saying she signed them?
Right.
And then changing his story and saying he signed them.
Yeah, was he nervous about something?
Or he's covering for someone else. There's a lot going on here. Now, when investigators interviewed Jack's wife, she contradicted a lot of what Jack had told them. She said that Jack told her Helen never returned from the Mayo Clinic and that he had been waiting for her in Glenview. She also said that the weekend he stayed in Glenview, he arranged to have some carpeting replaced in one of the rooms and had 2 rooms repainted.
Interesting.
Very interesting when you think about, okay, is he doing this on his own? Was he instructed by Helen to do this? Or is he doing this because something bad happened?
Right.
Which is why normally you would replace carpet in only one room and repaint only 1 or 2 rooms.
Right.
Instead of the whole house, is because something bad happened in a couple of rooms.
That's how you get rid of that evidence.
But investigators spoke to the workers and they said they didn't notice anything out of the ordinary in the rooms. Matlick also had Helen's pink Cadillac that he had been driving cleaned, waxed, and the interior shampooed on Monday, February 21st.
Suspicious.
Could be, or it could be part of his duties.
Yeah.
We don't know.
Maybe she liked her car to be cleaned and shampooed out
by the time she got back.
Yeah.
Or I think the problem is we're looking at everything that Jack did is suspicious because we know a lot of the things that he said weren't true. So it kind of makes everything, all of his actions and everything that comes after all of that suspicious.
You want to sing that song, don't you? Don't be suspicious.
Man, that was stuck in my head for days.
Yeah.
After we heard that voicemail. I purposefully have not gone on YouTube or anywhere though to hear it. Because if I hear it, the real one, it'll be stuck in there forever.
Again.
I can't have it.
Yeah.
Another thing that kind of piqued the interest of police was that they learned that Jack had collected and burned all of Helen's diaries, supposedly at her brother's request.
Again, it adds to that factor.
Well, yeah, you're going to burn someone's private diaries because why? They're going to come back and say, hey, why did you burn my diaries? Or somebody knows that they're never coming back.
Yeah.
And there might be something in there that you never want anybody to find out about.
Exactly. So if anything happens to me, get my journals.
Diaries.
I have to call
I'll
them.
get the pink ones with the little furry locks, and I'll burn them.
They are kind of cute.
Mhm.
Yeah. All right. Just burn them, though. That's the main thing.
That's the main thing. So no doubt, Gibbs, Jack Matlick continued to be a prime person of interest, but there really wasn't anything police could do. He maintained his innocence the entire time, and, without any solid evidence, they weren't able to charge him with anything. On top of that, Helen's brother, Charles Voorhees, believed in Matlick's innocence. And obviously, investigators looked into Richard Bailey as well. The connection between Richard and Helen, that would have come out fairly quickly in the investigation.
Yeah.
The fact that they were kind of seeing each other, that would have made him a person of interest. I think, in talking with her friends, the minute this whole kind of con man horse enterprise thing came up, that would have heightened police suspicion of Richard Bailey.
But with no evidence, no body, what are you going to do?
Yeah, if you're the police, not much that you can do. You've got a couple of people that you're looking at, but you're not able to charge anyone. So the missing person case of Helen Brach, it went cold, but police continued to investigate. They thoroughly went through all of Helen's financial records. They studied the forged checks, combed the grounds of her properties. They even followed up on some psychic tips.
You never know. Those psychic tips can pay off.
They have in some cases. Then on October 28th, 1977, an article in the Daily Herald said that Ernest Rizzo, a private investigator, stated that only two people could solve the mystery of Helen Brach, either Helen or Jack Matlick. Rizzo also supposedly found new information that was previously unknown. He said that after Matlick allegedly dropped Helen off at O'Hare, he showed up at her bank in Glenview 5 minutes after they opened at 9:05 a.m. He obtained access to her safe deposit box, which he was authorized to handle years ago. And it was after the visit to the bank that Jack took Helen's car to be cleaned inside and out.
So I wonder what was in that safe deposit box. Cash? Jewels?
We don't know.
No.
Rizzo found 5 calls on the call log from the Glenview house to Marshall Field and Company stores. He said that it was Matlick who had made the calls, each one to a different location. When Rizzo spoke to the clerks that dealt with Matlick, he found out that he was on the hunt for a meat grinder attachment for Helen Brach's blender. He purchased it at the last location he called, and he bought it on Helen's account. He requested it to be sent immediately. Rizzo asked Helen's accountant, Everett Moore, and this was a guy that was taking care of the house. He took care of Helen's bills and mail and all that stuff, what use a meat grinder would be normally for Jack Matlick. And the only thing that Everett could come up with was that maybe Jack was grinding up meat for all the stray dogs that Helen kept. But I think Gibbs is pretty obvious, right? What's going through Rizzo's mind is that, hey, he used this meat grinder to dispose of Helen's body.
That'd be a lot of work.
Yeah, depending on what type of meat grinder. Normally those are fairly small. And I mean, we talked about a wood chipper on TCAT.
Right.
That's a different story.
Yeah.
But a meat grinder.
That's a long.
That you would attach to a blender. I mean, this isn't even a big commercial meat grinder. That don't sound.
No, I'm thinking of that
logical.
That little food processor thing you have up on your countertop, the mixing bowl that you can put the different attachments in.
Yeah.
I know you can put a grinder on that. Yeah, if you want to make your own sausage or something, but you're not going to grind up
an entire body.
No, man,
But it is very gruesome to think about.
It is gruesome to think about.
Rizzo went on to say that Matlick had padlocks installed on 3 rooms in the mansion: Helen's bedroom, her study, and her closet. Now, he claimed that he was protecting her property, but again, it still seems odd. Everything seems a little bit odd. Investigators still didn't have anything to pin on Jack regarding Helen's disappearance. And after several months went by, the authorities began to believe that Helen was most likely deceased. She had not accessed any of her money and apparently had not taken any of it when she disappeared. She hadn't spoken to anyone, and she'd not used a single credit card this entire time. That's not a good sign.
It'd be difficult to get around if you didn't use your cash or credit cards. You'd have to have some really good friends taking care of you.
Yeah, difficult to get around, difficult to eat, difficult to live, especially if you're a person like Helen Brach,
right,
who has developed over the years, I assume, a certain level of taste and expectations.
Yeah.
Now, me and you might be able to get by eating dollar tacos. Not Helen Brach.
No, she's going to want something better than that.
Yeah. By early 1979, Matlick was refusing to speak to any media. Rizzo had by this time developed a new theory, which he shared with the Orlando Sentinel. He said the night before Helen went missing, she called Matlick. They talked for about 45 minutes. Rizzo theorized that it could have been a heavy call. Perhaps she was letting him go because of expenses. She had apparently fired him once before, and he begged for the job back. Rizzo thought that Matlick made Helen disappear so that he could stay on the payroll a little while longer and maybe siphon off a little extra money.
Yeah, I mean, you could theorize that.
Yeah, I mean, again, when you get into cases like this, okay, everybody's got their theories, and this is a PI who obviously did some investigation,
right?
But there was no way for him to know whether or not that happened. He wasn't on the phone call.
Right.
So when you say theory, yeah, this really is just a kind of theory.
But I mean, you could talk on the phone for 45 minutes about so many things.
Sure. In 1979, Helen's business manager offered a $200,000 reward for the discovery of Helen's body.
That's huge.
It's a lot of money, but Helen had a lot of money.
Yeah.
So, you could offer up a pretty hefty reward. But by May of 1984, Helen had still not been found, and she was declared legally dead by a probate judge. Her millions of dollars, which had been sitting in limbo, went mostly to animal rescue groups. Some of it went to her brother Charles. In 1989, a prosecutor looking into the horse fraud business took a closer look at her disappearance as well. It was discovered that Richard Bailey had ties to Silas Jane, the founder of the Jane Gang, which was heavily involved with the horse business and organized crime. In July of 1989, federal prosecutors in Chicago charged Richard Bailey with 29 counts, including conspiracy, solicitation, and conspiracy in Helen's death. There were also charges that he and 22 others bilked insurance carriers. This was known as the horse murders scandal. Basically, what they did was they took, for the lack of a better term, cheap horses, and they insured them as though they were worth a ton of money. And then Gibbs, they would kill these horses to collect the insurance money. It's horrible on a number of fronts.
It sure is.
Killing horses for no reason, horrible. Bilking insurance carriers out of money, that's bad as well.
But big money.
I can see where that could be a lot of money. I mean, if you're buying a horse for, $5,000-$10,000, but you're saying it's worth hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars, that type of money, maybe even a million. Some of these horses are worth millions of dollars. You could see how the dollars would add up very quickly. Prosecutors believe that Helen was going to blow the lid off Richard's operation and turn him in, which caused someone in his organization to murder her and hide her body. And to me, Gibbs, this is not all that far-fetched. We talked about it. She had already threatened Richard.
Right.
Before she went missing about turning him in for some different things. Not exactly this horse scandal thing, I don't think, but.
Well, if you're making all this money, scamming all these women, you have no problem killing horses, you're not going to let somebody get in your way and ruin everything that you have. It's not unreasonable to think that he could have had something to do with it, or somebody in his organization.
No, it's not unreasonable at all, especially if you're talking about having ties to organized crime. If you're able to kill a whole bunch of horses, not that hard to believe that you're willing to go a little bit further and kill a human being.
You're probably willing to do anything to keep that money coming in.
In 1995, Richard Bailey, after battling prosecutors for years over what he said was a weak case, pleaded guilty to racketeering charges, mail fraud, money laundering, and unlawful money transactions. He believed that he could persuade the judge to go easy on him, which a con man believes that they can persuade anyone to do anything.
And he really did. He really thought he could get anybody to do anything. He thought he was that good.
Now, his defense claimed that he had a debilitating physical condition that caused his reckless behavior. Unfortunately for Richard, the judge found the evidence so compelling and believed that he was involved in a murder conspiracy of Helen Brach. U.S. District Judge Milton Shader sentenced him to a mandatory term of life in prison. Richard Bailey appealed his charges and sentence related to the murder conspiracy in 2005. And it was during his appeal that an FBI informant, guy named Joe Plemons, came forward with new information about Helen Brach's disappearance. Plemons said that the mob killed her. He also said he was there when Helen's body was incinerated at East Chicago's Inland Steel plant. Joe claimed that he was trying to clear his conscience, and that he was not part of the group of people involved in the conspiracy to murder Helen. He was not present when the murder took place, but he admitted to helping 3 others unload her body from a station wagon into a large flaming open pit that appeared to contain melted iron.
That'd be one way to get rid of a body.
Pretty savage, but yeah, I think that would do it. He said that Helen was murdered to prevent her from going to the police after discovering she had been swindled out of her money in the horse deals. Based on this information, during his appeal, the judge reduced Richard Bailey's sentence to 30 years. But sometime later, Joe Plemons changed his story, saying that he was handed a gun and was told to either shoot Helen Brach or he would be shot himself. According to Plemons, the man who threatened him was a guy named Ken Hansen, who was convicted of 3 murders in 2002, and his brother Kurt. Joe said that Helen had already been beaten to death, and these guys only made him shoot her to make sure that she was dead.
Well, they also want to make sure that now he was part of the, right?
That makes a lot of sense, if you believe anything. And I don't know what to believe in this story.
I know.
There is so much going on with this thing. But the rest of his story, it pretty much stayed the same about the disposal of her body. He also gave authorities a ruby ring that he claimed fell off Helen when moving her body. But I don't believe the authorities have ever been able to prove that the ring was hers. Plemons was never charged with Helen Brach's murder.
Well, no body, no murder weapon, no other evidence besides him saying this happened. And remember, he said, "Oh, I didn't kill her. She was already dead when I shot her."
Well, not only that, but he's changed his stories a number of times.
Right.
So, how hard is it going to be for someone to, in court, pick these stories apart, or his defense team to say, hey, you can't believe what this guy, my own client's saying. He said 3 different variations of the story. In 2019, Richard Bailey was released from prison, and he gave an interview outside of the prison. He said there was no lawsuit or any threat from Helen to report the horse fraud. He claimed they were planning to get married and that he genuinely loved her and she was different from his other cons.
So I have a problem right there with him saying that. She was different from my other cons.
Well, it sounds like something a con man would say.
Exactly.
He claimed a half dozen people were involved in planning Helen's murder and that Jack Matlick was one of them. Matlick has always denied any involvement, and he passed away in 2011. When someone asked Richard how he should be remembered, he said, "Just like I am. Something. I definitely didn't kill Helen Brach. So I should be remembered as definitely not killing Helen Brach."
Yeah, wasn't me.
So as we wrap up this case, Gibbs, and it's a fascinating case, it's also one of those cases that kind of irritates you and gets under your skin a little bit because you've got Jack, you've got Richard. Both of them were in Helen's life. Both of them have done some things, especially after her disappearance and over the years, that you would have to call strange, odd, questionable. But like in so many cases, right, that doesn't make a case on its own. The police have to have enough evidence to feel like they can get a conviction. I don't feel like they've ever had that. Now, a big part of that, especially in the 1970s, was that they didn't have Helen's body.
No.
You and I have talked about that quite a bit. A lot of times prosecutors, back then were very leery, and it almost never happened where they would try to get a conviction when they didn't have a body. That's a little more common today, but it was not back then.
No, not back then. I'm just still, she was last seen in Minnesota. Did she get on that plane? Did she not?
Somebody did.
So
somebody used her ticket.
Yeah. So
right?
You could say she did. And maybe when she got off the plane, certain events happened. Mm-hmm. Or maybe she never did. They put somebody else on the plane as her because, they didn't check your ID and stuff, right? Back then, it was just get on the plane, give your ticket and go. So did someone kidnap her, take her when she was in Minnesota, and they put whoever on a plane to show her ticket was used to throw them off? I don't know. It's all bizarre.
You could come up with, just like Rizzo, you could come up with a number of different theories, but you wouldn't have enough evidence on any of them to really say, yeah, I believe that, or, have really any credibility.
I read one thing on a blog online where they were saying that Jack and Richard were in cahoots together. You could go so many different avenues.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised about that at all.
Yeah.
It wouldn't surprise me if that's what came out because Richard was a con man.
Yeah.
He swindled her. She threatened him. Now, Jack did a bunch of stuff that was very odd.
Yeah, very bizarre for sure.
And you have to question why he did and said all of these things that were contradicted by so many different people.
Including his wife,
unless he was covering something up or covering up for someone.
Yeah.
But, some of that stuff could be explained as maybe being part of his duties, but some of the other stuff can't be explained. So
it makes you scratch your head.
It does. But that's it for the case of the disappearance of Helen Brach. Very mysterious. And it's so, old at this point, unless they discover her body. I don't know that they'll find, or somebody just, confesses.
Yeah.
And again, Jack's deceased.
Somebody comes along. Hey, my dad or granddad told me this. You'll be able to find the bones of the body here.
Yes, right. And then from there, they would get some evidence that would conclusively tie somebody. I think it's a hard case to solve.
I think it kind of goes with Jimmy Hoffa.
A little bit.
Yeah.
A little bit. We got some voicemails. You want to check that out?
Let's hear them.
Hi, Mike and Gibby. Holy mothballs. I was just walking down the street listening to True Crime All the Time Unsolved when I got to the episode on Rebecca McClung, the unsolved one in Ohio. And I'm listening to the end, and all of a sudden I hear my voicemail, and I'm walking alone, of course, and I shrieked and did a little dance, and of course got a few weird looks. But I just want to say thank you so much. Still love you guys, keeping me going, and just sending lots of good wishes to everyone in Ohio right now from Australia. I really still think about my friends and family all the time, every single day. And I hope you guys are keeping safe and keep your own time ticking. Bye-bye.
Did she say holy mothballs?
Yeah.
Those are some tiny balls, man.
That's definitely not an Ohio thing.
No.
Maybe that's an Australian thing that she picked up.
Yeah.
Since she's been over there. Holy mothballs, Batman.
Yeah.
Hi, Mike and Gibby. This is Ashley Turner from Fort Wayne. I just wanted to tell you guys that I absolutely love your podcast. I listen to it all the time, as well as Unsolved. You guys keep me going throughout my workday. I do have a suggestion for a case. It's the Lindsay Buziak murder. She was murdered almost 13 years ago in Victoria, British Columbia. She was showing $1 million house in Saanich and was murdered by the people that set up the showing, or they are the conspirators. It's still very up in the air. This is one of the most well-known cases in Canada. I am actually pretty good friends with her dad. He runs a website all about her murder. It's called lindsaybuziakmurder.com. You can find tons of information there. A lot of people have covered it on podcasts, but I would just love to see your guys' spin on it. I've also done a petition for the Lindsay Buziak murder case to get it pulled from the Saanich Police Department. So that's also out there. It's got over 8,000 signatures all over the world. Very, very interesting case. It's just like tons of twists and turns and very, very interesting. But again, I just want to tell you guys I love you and love your podcast. Keep your own time ticking. Thanks.
Oh, Gibbs, we got to look into that.
Yeah.
For sure.
Interesting.
I think you're all over it.
I'm all over it.
Hi, this is Shay from Illinois. I was calling because me and my husband have this weird dynamic where I listen to your podcast 24/7, either in my earbuds or out loud, and it drives him crazy because he cannot stand the details of the crimes. Yet, I just walked outside and he had recently shot a deer and he was cleaning the deer and I accidentally seen him pop the eye out of the skull and I about threw up. It doesn't make any sense. I had to tell you that. It blows my mind, the differences between him and I, and him being able to do that to a deer and me listening to it, but not vice versa. Anyway, I love you both. I love listening to you. It's all I listen to. Keep your own time ticking.
Well, we appreciate it.
Yeah.
And I do think it is, I don't know what the word is, but it varies person to person what you find interesting and what you find objectionable.
Yes.
For me, I think I've told you this before. I can watch the news, which I don't very often, and I see a lot of really bad things on there, and it doesn't really hit my heartstrings, if that makes sense.
Sure.
But then I'll watch ESPN and they'll have a story on this little kid who, has some type of issue, and they bring him out to the stadium, they hand him the ball and they let him run to the end zone. And then I cry for 4 hours.
Yeah. You're just a big mess.
It's like there are certain things that hit you and then certain things that you just kind of look past, I guess.
I remember when I told you they brought the McRib back out and you
my gosh, I cried like a
I was like,
baby.
It's just a sandwich.
Because I love that McRib.
Yeah.
All right, buddy. We got to get out of here. That is it for another episode of True Crime All the Time Unsolved. So for Mike
and Gibby,
stay safe and keep your own time ticking.
At Arizona State University, we're bringing world-class education from our globally acclaimed faculty to you. Ranked #1 in innovation for 10 consecutive years and #2 among public universities for employability, ASU isn't just ahead of the curve, it's creating new paths to success. Earn your degree from the nation's most innovative university. Online, that's a degree better. Explore more than 300 undergraduate, graduate, and certificate programs at asuonline.asu.edu.